I'd like to introduce our panel. Excuse me. Our next panel is the Brexit effect and everything else. Brexit Bulletin, EU ICT update, and changes in South African immigration programs. Our lead speaker is going to be Carmen Fakhoury, president of Fakhoury Global Immigration Professional Services. This group was started in 2005, and Carmen is a leader in business immigration, global practice, and human resources, as well as the consulting and business processes that develop around global mobility. She's come a long way. It's her first trip to India, and we're just really glad that she's done that, and we're really happy to have you here. Why don't you come up and take your place with us? Kiran SN is General Manager of HCL Technologies. I introduced him, but come on up. We're glad to have you back on another panel. Anuj Sarin, if you would come. Anuj is currently Immigration Group Head at Wipro Technologies. More than 15 years experience in immigration. We've worked together on a lot of projects and had a lot of fun together. Yep. In fact, I know some things about him that I won't tell you just for various reasons. But some things I really like about him, we've had some fun times going out and dining together and eating things that people probably shouldn't. But he is an expert in systems development around processes, immigration processes. He's worked closely with INSZoom over the years and is a leader in this area. Finally, we have Nandakumar. Whoa, okay, that's for, yeah. Nanda Kirupanandam. Is that father's name? Yes. Thank you for coming. More than 13 years of immigration experience and now heads global immigration assignments at Atkins Consulting. He claims that he is a benevolent dictator, which is an oxymoron. Sounds like he's got that personality, a lot of good and very strong. And so we're glad to have you with us. Oh yeah, he's only competing with Trump, so we know he's going to be leading the way. Carmen, we're ready for you now. Thank you so much.
I'm going to get started because we only have 30 minutes. I have just a handful of slides that I'm going to quickly walk through so that we can have time to chat with our outstanding panelists. I have a few questions that I can start with, and then, of course, I'd love you to use that tool to ask your own questions as well. So, and by the way, I'm not going to cover South Africa. I really want to just kind of focus on Brexit and the ICT update, please, for the sake of time. So, as everybody in this room knows, a referendum was held on June 23rd, 2016 to decide whether the UK should leave or remain in the EU. And as you all know, the leave won by 51.9%. There were two main reasons that drove this, the outcome of this vote. Number one was immigration. Britain wanted to control the number of people that were living and working in the UK. They wanted to take back control of their borders and reduce the number of people that were working in the country. Number two, they wanted autonomy. They didn't want to have all decision-making as part of the EU as a whole. I mean, they've always said we have no interest in being the United States of Europe. I'm sorry, I went a little too quickly. So basically, it's a 2-year process of leaving the EU. It was initiated on March 29th, 2017. So we will see the leave in 2 years from that date. I thought I always like the numbers, the statistics. I think it helps when we're framing up a conversation. So for the year ending September 2015, there were 290,000 non-EU nationals that had migrated to the UK for work purposes. That was up 9% from the prior year, so that was at 265,000. Of the bigger number, of the 290,000, 92,000 of those were on the Tier 2 skilled visa. 57% of those individuals were Indian nationals, and only 11% were US nationals. Theresa May has stated her goal is to reduce the migration population to 100,000 people a year. Those are actually not gigantic numbers by no means for the UK. The bigger population that Brexit really impacts is the EEA population, the Europeans that have come into England to work. There are 3.2 million people living and working in the UK. The smaller subset of that is just the working population, which is roughly 2.3 million people. But that represents about 7% of the UK workforce. So that's a pretty decent number right there. So the UK has set out its proposal for managing the immigration status of the EU nationals that are currently in the UK. Basically, if an EU national and his or her family has been in the UK, lived in the UK for more than 5 years, they would qualify for settled status. If they've been in the UK for less than 5 years, they would need to apply for a temporary visa and follow up with settled status at the 5-year point. For those that hold PR status, it would be invalidated after the UK leaves the EU, but then they would reapply. This is the proposal. It's not enacted. It could change. We should be finding out more about this later in the year. So what can employers do? The biggest thing employers can do is know the status of your foreign worker population, whether it's the Indian national population, whether it's the EEA population. Know who you have working for you in the UK from a foreign worker standpoint. The next biggest thing that I think is important is, I know a lot of the organizations that are here are large companies that are sending people there quite a bit, so you already have your Tier 2 sponsorship. But for entities that have not yet obtained that, that would be an important thing to do prior to the leave so that you've got it in place. In the future, this is all to be seen, but the EEA nationals will need to go through, or most likely need to go through, that Tier 2 status process. And then the last slide that I wanted to discuss was just what can employees do? Most importantly, they need to make sure that they have their documentation. I've listed here, several different types of things, but the date of their arrival into the UK, so their travel documents, their housing records, their tax records, the P60s, any work records, their contracts, their pay slips, all of those type of documents will be important for that person to have on his or herself. So, I kind of rushed through because I'm trying to respect the time, but let's move into the discussion. For all of you, you are all working with large multinational global corporations that certainly have a presence in the UK. How has Brexit impacted your organization's view of doing business in the UK? And just as a corollary to that, has it slowed down your growth strategy in that geography?
So right now, if you see, there is a lot of flux and there is no clear understanding of what is going to come out of Brexit. So it's more of a wait and watch situation as to what is going to happen. But what we're looking at doing is making sure, as is pointed out in the slides, keeping a close track of our EU nationals who are in the UK. And as far as business is concerned, we're looking at it as business as usual. And UK is important geography for all the IT companies. So at this point of time, we are definitely not looking at UK any differently than we were, in the last few years. So the strategy continues to remain the same. It's just that you're looking at keeping a closer watch to make sure that what needs to be done to protect the EU employees that we have in UK are continue to be protected and are able to continue to provide us with their valuable talent. Also, we are looking at a significant increase in the localization, which we've been speaking about in the past conferences also. And that's not just a very UK specific point, but globally, you're looking at increasing your footprint of non-Indian or local employees in those countries.
Thank you. Kiran?
I concur to what Anuj said. In addition to that, what we've been also hearing in newspapers of clients which are based out in UK are also looking at moving out of UK. So as we continue to maintain a wait and watch, I think the other aspect also is, would the clients move their operations out of UK, which would mean that the companies have to redesign their strategy in terms of which of those countries will we have to start giving them talent. So I think it's definitely a wait and watch, and it's a long period, right? It's a 2 year and 2.5 years we'll have to look at. So yeah, I mean, trying to understand what could come up, very difficult. I think except a few people in UK, I don't know anybody else knows what it will be like when it actually is in March 2019, and I think we will have to stop being a fortune teller. But we're just ensuring that we have our documentation ready, we know what we're doing, we know a percentage of EU nationals in UK, and trying to just keep a track on that.
Good. Thank you.
All right.
Nandu?
So I would like to step back, right? So why Brexit, and what is the real intent? Is it a political issue or is it economical issue? Recently, there is a study by the London School of Economics. There is no empirical evidence on the economical issue. So is there any impact for the UK born or a UK origin people on the jobs or on the wages or on the quality of life? There is no evidence. Though the Brexit is primarily impact for the EU nationals in UK, but also the flip side is that there are, though the statistics said around 3.3 million people living in UK. But if you see the statistics from 1995 to 2015, almost it's like from 0.9 million to 3.3 million, which is 1.5% to increase of 5.3%. Of course, if you see after the A8, which is the 2004 A8 in the EU, where the 8 countries were into the European Union, all those Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic, etc. So if you see, almost the 29% of Polish are now employed and working in UK. Definitely that's a more concern for the UK nationals, but there is no correlation whether it's impacting the wages or jobs or the quality of life, absolutely no. But what this impacts to India or like for us, definitely that's going to be in terms of there might be a wage impact. Already there is a wage impact and a lot of changes by the MAC as a first, and then they are working on the other in terms of aspects of making more tighter controls and bringing more levy on the national insurance. So the other concern the UK has about the people enjoying the benefits of in UK. So I think it's going to be in terms of more stringent control, etc. So and for us as Atkins, I think the fear is more on the UK outbounds to Europe, where around the statistics is around 1.5 million. So 1.5 million UK nationals are living in UK. What's going to happen to them? Whether after Brexit, how the social security agreement is going to work, how the tax treaty is going to work, how the immigration is going to work, it's going to be very complex. So I think it's important for us. So nothing has happened so far because even the government in UK doesn't know exactly how to really manage this and what are the policies they need to work and what are the treaties they have to work with the European Unions, etc. So, and as we progress, definitely as a company, we need to see what strategies we need to follow, etc. I know it's a long answer. Sorry for that.
That's okay.
Thank you.
No, thank you very much. If you have any questions, please use that tool to submit them. But the next question that I have for you is, what internal steps have you taken, if any at all, to prepare for Brexit with respect to the employee population, the foreign employee population that you have there? And perhaps you could talk about what is the approximate percentage split that you have of foreign workers from the EEA versus third country nationals, if you're able to give that information.
In terms of the population, I suppose it would be definitely it would be a majority of them would be Indian nationals.
Okay.
But there is significant number of EU nationals as well in UK working for us, And I think the first thing that we have done is that to ensure that everybody knows that this is the population that needs to be ring fenced after a couple of years. So we ensure that we have made changes to the whole process of ensuring that we have all their information at this point of time, and ensure that we know when it will expire. Do they fall into after March 2019 or before March 2019? We've kept a track of that, and probably send them, start sending them alerts from next year onwards, saying if this is when we know more clarity, this is what you need to do, this is how it will impact you. And then as we come closer to it, the roadmap also involves a lot of discussions and workshops, and trying to tell them that it's not more about immigration, because it's, as Nandu was mentioning, it's a lot larger issue, right? A social security,
Sure.
a taxation. So the whole construct of the employment has to change. So we're just going to not take a long shot, but take step by step, understand what it is, and make amends to the process.
Thank you. Thank you.
From Atkins' point of view, it's about the setting the expectations and educating the business. I think it's not about the immigration or the social security or the other issues, tax issues. It's more of a trade issue. So how we are going to do business in Europe? What are the impacts it's going to have? Because that's going to directly impact the other areas of HR, etc., immigration, that later stage. So at this stage, it's very uncertain, though we expect, though I was there a couple of weeks back in London, and most of them are like really want to go back to, in terms of, they don't want to leave in terms of the EU. But the reality is very different, because if you see in terms of the working population, average age in UK is around 40%. Vis-a-vis, if you see the A8 population working in UK is 34. And overall European Union average age employees working in UK is around 38 average age. So I know means most of the people who voted might be 40 plus maybe, but a lot of youngsters maybe they want to be open to, in terms of one side we talk about the globalization, other side we are talking about the protectionism, which is absolutely ridiculous, but that's a reality now. And I think, as I said, I think we will discuss in terms of what are the other impacts specific to the human resources on the immigration, on the tax and other side, but it's more of, for now it's about doing business.
Right.
I think that's where, that's my view is.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Could you put those questions on the screen? I know there were some questions that came in from the audience, if that's possible. So, any suggestion on things to take care of while recruiting EU nationals to work in the UK? For instance, will their home country benefits, like pension, get impacted? Do you have any thoughts on this within your own foreign national population?
So that's a EU national working in UK, right? Is that right?
EU, yeah, while recruiting, so a new hire, while recruiting EU nationals to work in the UK.
Yeah, see, for now nothing has changed.
Right.
Means, it continues as is. Again, as I said, there is no clarity in terms of how it's going to pan out overall, what are the impacts
Right.
at a UK level and then at corporate level, and then it boils down to the different sector levels, etc. For now, it's as is, but though there are a lot of fears on how in US it's happened, it's more of a perception and like a lot of fear, etc. But it's not going to be easy. So it's going to be very time consuming because it's a lot of policy matters. So as of now, there is no impact in terms of any of those benefits. As I said, the one thing which they don't have UK has the social security agreement at EU level. So they don't have at a country level. So, and if they have to go back 20 years and then work on the whatever that treaties they have, it's going to be ridiculous. They can't do in terms of going back to the paperwork, etc. So still a lot of things are uncertain, and I think as we progress, we will have more clarity. But for now, in terms of pensions or any other social security benefits, or there is no changes as of now. It's status quo.
Just adding to that, one thing you should be careful when you're recruiting a new person is where he or she is going to fall in the timelines that have been so far defined with, with the plans of Brexit. So a EU national entering UK now versus an EU national who has entered UK 5 years ago, the impact on both of them could be different. So just, for a discussion's sake, if we look at an EU national who entered 5 years ago may be able to continue to live within the UK permanently, but an EU national entering UK now may have challenges in a long-term continuity into the US. So you probably may want to look at it on a case-by-case basis to see, with the worst-case assumption that, we may not be able to retain this EU national in UK for a long period of time, and then try and work out and see what would be the best kind of compensation structure, what would be the, you look at having him on a local payroll, or you look at seeing if possible to put in a home country payroll and, a different model in the UK. So it's probably a case-by-case evaluation you should look at doing, rather than, trying to think that one hat would work for all.
Sure.
Would be my.
So let me ask the next question, and this came from one of the participants here. I think it's an interesting question. Do you think, in your opinion, Brexit is going to now start a new wave of other countries breaking off from the EU and trying to establish their own independence?
So, while that is a possibility, when, the initial talks about Brexit were happening, remember coined the term Frexit, and all that. And yes, while it is a possibility of that happening, or even if you look at within the UK itself, there are, Scotland, for example. Most people in Scotland do not want to move out of the European Union. Is that going to trigger off another referendum? There was a talk some time ago that, we should revisit the earlier referendum we had, wherein they decided to continue to stay within the United Kingdom. So that possibility is there, and it's scary to think about that, because if other countries try and follow suit of what UK has done, you really don't know how much more impact it's going to have. Nationalistic feelings are extremely high, so you don't know where it's going to lead.
Right.
Brexit, or Netherlands then deciding, or Belgium deciding, or Germany deciding. In fact, I was just reading what they call it, neo-Europeans or something like that. I'm forgetting, but I think it was neo-Europeans or something. There's a group of people now who are trying to protest against the move of UK to move out of the European Union, and they're kind of going around and Theresa May was in Florence, I believe, or is going to Florence, and they kind of staged a protest over there against this, saying that, we don't want this break to happen. But then there is the other side also, and the referendum has shown that majority of the United Kingdom wanted to move out. So it's scary to think what could happen if other countries also decide to move out of
Right.
Europe. And, as Nandu has been talking about business, that's really going to change the dynamics of how business is done
Right.
within Europe. And one country moving out, while difficult, impact may be absorbed. But multiple countries looking at moving out of the EU, you don't know where that's going to head from a business and economic point of view.
In my own country, there's always been talk over the years that California wants to separate out from the rest of the country, but it's always been discussions. There's never been any action associated with that. But it is a scary thought to think about that. If it's okay with you, I want to switch gears and talk for a couple minutes about the ICT directive. I know none of you were here yesterday, but during the global training session, I had overviewed for the audience what the ICT directive is, which state, which country, which member states are already participating in it. Please tell me how you have been using the ICT directive within your own organizations, and if it has brought about any immigration challenges that we can, open the eyes of the audience to.
I'll take a shot at it, because we are planning to use that, and I think the concept is very much required. We have, because if you look at the whole business model, we have people who would move on a short term for some time, say 2 to 3 months from one country, then come back to the main country. say between Netherlands and, I'll take the classical case of Netherlands to Spain, saying that Spain takes 6 months to get a work permit, but if the EU ICT is implemented, then a Netherlands work permit holder could go for 90 days, get the implementation done and come back. Because we are seeing more and more clients in European Union who are looking at implementation of projects across Europe. They're not talking about specifics. So the contracts has changed. So they need the same set of people to be available everywhere for the same kind of implementation. Very difficult. If I start filing work permits, it probably take 4 years to get them to 4 countries, right? This is a very good concept, but the challenges we face are this. One important challenge that we get is in terms of the social security, right? India has a totalization agreement with Netherlands, but does not have it Spain. So how do I treat those people? Should I pay local pension? Should I pay local social security? Or should I depend on Netherlands because I'm already paying there? There's no clarity. That's a biggest challenge, number one. What about tax? Where does he pay tax? What about salary? Should I pay him in Netherlands and pay him allowance in Spain, or should I move his payroll? Because if I move his payroll, then I'm not going to have anybody in Netherlands for that period. So his dependents will also have to move to Spain. Would I be ready to do that? Would accommodation be able to do? What happened to his relocation allowance? So there's a lot of things that get associated with it, and it's need a larger discussion, and that's the reason I'm just going back to my first session which Naik was leading, saying that and there's a lot of compliance which is beyond immigration, right? And that's the reason that you need to have a comprehensive framework of what you will do, talk to all the people that you are working with, and ensure that the business knows about it. The business is going to talk about, okay, instead of 6 months, I can send this guy in 3 weeks, but that's not the story.
Right.
It's the tip of the iceberg. The problem is deep down. So I think that is what we'll have to, probably we'll have to test and see what it goes through, understand, but there's a lot of things to be taken care of. It's a tricky subject, but once you're able to get your, it's like swimming. Once you know how to swim, you will very well swim it, but the first time is important.
Arun, or Anuj, have you used it in Wipro?
As Kiran said, we are also in the process of that evaluation, and yes, the big benefit, as Kiran was saying, is the ability to have, when you get a multi-country project, let's say, for example, the ability to have this resource move within Europe rather than having to wait for individual visas to come through from each of the countries. That's one of the significant benefits you get from a mobility point of view. But then or the immigration point of view, let me say. But then it's not just about immigration, as Kiran said. There are far more complexities which are going to get involved. And also when you see the implementation they're doing, each country is coming up with their own kinds of implementation. So for example, you do an ICT to country X allows the ICT resource to work at a customer site. Now you want to move the person to country Y, but country Y regulations say, an ICT means it has to be to your office. It has to be to your legal entity. The guy has to be working in your office premise. So it's not an easy thing to say that, movement is allowed, so pick up a guy from Germany and put him into France. There are going to be a lot more complexities involved, some of which Kiran was also pointing out. And then as Nandu had also said earlier, is, there's taxation which needs to be taken into account. Also, the human aspect of it, like family in one country, can the employee be in the other country? So there is going to be a huge complex thing. So as Kiran was saying, and even that was my thought, going back to the earlier presentation, to start off with, you should look at creating a matrix out, which kind of defines out from, if the ICT is from country X and the person needs to go to country Y, what are the 10 or 20 specific things which you need to look at? And then to look and get into the specific laws of those to make sure that when that move happens, the person is legally working in the other country. And you have managed to take care of the softer aspects, if I may use that word, of that move.
Sure.
Just to add to that, the 3 points. One is the different client contracts, if they have to go and work with different clients. The second is the billing aspect, how it's going to be in terms of the billing is going to be done. The third is about the permanent establishment issue, because you may not have the entities in all the countries, so then how we are going to manage those. So just to add to that, what Kiran and Anuj said, so these are the 3 areas which we have to identify.
You brought up all wonderful points, things to look out for. So our time is up. Thank you very much for being panelists on this discussion. Your input was valuable.